Hello, and welcome to Lab 9, Marine Ecosystems. Ecosystem flowchart. An ecosystem consists of sunlight, an energy source, a group of living organisms, and the physical environment in which they live. Within an ecosystem, there are two fundamental properties. One, energy transfers only in one direction, meaning that energy from the sun is transferred into organic material by primary producers, which is captured by various consumers and decomposers, and eventually all energy within the ecosystem is lost as heat. Two, nutrients, the elements necessary for life, are recycled many times within an ecosystem. Organisms within the ecosystem include autotrophs, or primary producers. These are organisms that produce their own food, such as plants and bacteria. Heterotrophs, organisms which consume primary producers. They are divided into two types: primary consumers, or herbivores, or plant eaters, and secondary consumers, or carnivores, or meat eaters. Decomposers are organisms, such as fungi and bacteria, that decompose dead organic material and waste and recycle the nutrients back into the food chain. The trophic web. A trophic web connects the feeding and nutrition relationships between organisms in an ecosystem. In a trophic web, feeding relationships are depicted in two ways. Red arrows indicate the direction of energy flow through feeding, with circled numbers on each arrow indicating the number of trophic levels, and two, trophic levels or tiers. Additionally, all ecosystems are comprised of primary producers at the bottom, with top predators at the top. The trophic levels. Tier 1, primary producers. Primary producers collect their energy from sunlight, and they provide a base upon which all organisms depend. These may include microplankton, bacteria, microalgae, and detritus. Detritus refers to the recently dead microorganisms that various consumers feed upon. Tier 2, primary consumers. Primary consumers feed upon primary producers. These may include copiopods, krill, protozoans, and benthic invertebrates. Tier 3 is where primary consumers, or the herbivores, are fed upon by Tier 3 secondary consumers, or carnivores. These secondary consumers are then fed upon by organisms in higher trophic levels. And again, there's always a top predator. Keystone species. Krill is an organism which performs multiple trophic strategies, meaning krill feeds and is fed upon at more than one trophic level. Additionally, krill is an integral part of the food web. Hence, krill is what's known as a keystone species. A keystone species is a species on which other organisms within an ecosystem largely depend upon, such that if it were removed, the ecosystem would change significantly. Population controls. Population size is limited by trophic levels either above or below. In bottom-up population control, population is limited by food supply. In this scenario, not enough food is available for the population to increase beyond a certain size. In top-down population control, population is limited by predators, meaning food is available for population growth, but it's kept smaller through predation. Ecological efficiency. Ecological efficiency is the efficiency at which energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. In marine ecosystems, the ecological efficiency averages at 10%, with 90% lost as heat. In the food chain shown above, 6 trophic levels are listed to demonstrate 10% ecological efficiency. For example, if phytoplankton absorbed 100,000 units of energy from the sun, then at a 10% ecological efficiency, only 10,000 units of energy are transferred to zooplankton, the next trophic level, through predation. The remaining 90% of energy is lost as heat. With the addition of each trophic level, 10% of unit energy is transferred, with only 1 unit of energy reaching the human. In food webs that consist of only a few trophic levels, energy is conserved. For example, if phytoplankton absorbed 100,000 units of energy, then 10,000 units of energy are transferred to sardines, and 1,000 units of energy are transferred to humans, thus making a more efficient ecosystem. This example illustrates 2 key points. More trophic levels equals a less efficient ecosystem, and ecosystem efficiency is increased by feeding on lower trophic levels. The tuna sandwich. Question: assume your sandwich has 100 grams of tuna. Calculate how many grams of phytoplankton were consumed for your snack. Begin with 100 grams of tuna. At a 10% ecological efficiency transfer between each trophic level, then 1,000 grams of mackerel is required to sustain 100 grams of tuna, or 10,000 grams of herring, or 100,000 grams of zooplankton. Thus, 1 million grams of phytoplankton were required for your tuna sandwich. Next, determine how many grams of human biomass is supported by 100 grams of tuna. Answer: 10 grams. At a 10% ecological efficiency, only 10% of biomass is supported at each trophic level. Predator and prey interactions. In Part C of your lab, you will answer questions concerning changes to an ecosystem when a new top predator is introduced. Researchers from UC Santa Cruz studying an ecosystem located offshore of the Aleutian Islands in the North Pacific documented an abrupt decline in sea otter population. The decline was attributed to the increased predation by killer whales that had shifted their trophic feeding level. The primary organisms within this food chain were identified as kelp, the primary producer, sea urchins, first level consumer or herbivore, sea otters, first level carnivore, and killer whales, the top carnivore. The addition of killer whales had the following impact on the ecosystem. In the following figure, both food chains are shown. On the left, prior to the arrival of killer whales, and on the right, after the addition of killer whales. Additionally, graphs indicate the relative populations before and after the addition of killer whales. In the scenario on the left, a balanced ecosystem was maintained. Kelp density was kept high due to low grazing intensity from the sea urchins, and as sea urchin populations were limited by high number of sea otter abundance. However, the addition of killer whales created an unbalanced ecosystem. Kelp density was devastated by an unlimited army of sea urchins, as predation by sea otters drastically declined due to the arrival of killer whales. Thus, as killer whales increased, the number of sea otters decreased, increasing the number of sea urchins, which decreased the density of kelp. As kelp helped provide an underwater forest home for many species, this drastically changed the ecosystem. However, the results to this study came under dispute. Alternative studies hypothesized numerous biotic and abiotic factors that were the cause in the decline of the ecosystem. Biotic causes that were suggested included the introduction of disease or virus and bacteria, human hunting, other predators, and the loss of other food sources. Abiotic possible causes included seawater temperature changes, pollution, and various environmental chemical changes. The Limpets experiment. Finally, in part D of your lab, you will study the movements of limpets, or sea snails. In this experiment, 2 aquariums were set up, each with 10 limpets. However, in one tank, 5 crabs were added. Limpets started out on a circular rock in the center of each aquarium. After 12 hours, new positions of the limpets were marked and distance traveled were measured relative to the circular rock. Distance measurements were added to the table below. Results. In the absence of predators, limpets freely moved around the tank. However, with the addition of crabs, limpets latched themselves onto the rock. In your lab discussion, you will hypothesize why limpets displayed this behavior. In a follow-up experiment, a sea star was placed in tank number 1, with the limpets. The limpets immediately crawled to the opposite side of the tank instead of latching down onto the rock in defense. Again, you will hypothesize why the limpets displayed this behavior. Thank you for attending Lab 9, Marine Ecosystems. Please address your questions to your lab TA.